This is Future Sense Now, where we explore the landscape and byways of our shared futures. Future Sense Now is brought to you by the Futures Forum. Stay tuned for a journey to the futures of women with host Dr. Claire Nelson.
Greetings and welcome to Future Sense Now, an online e-magazine of the Futures Forum. It is March 2018 and we're celebrating Women's History Month with an exploration into the future history of women. Women 2030 and beyond, we're voicing her story. Why 2030? Well, the UN SDG goals speak specifically to the development and inclusion of women. In Providential's prospectus, a trend report on what women futurists are watching for 2018, we found that women futurists are saying they see the trend for women seeking elected leadership and starting their own organizations and enterprises increasing. And this is just one of the many trends that inform how we might want to think about the future as it emerges. In this segment, we have someone who is an expert at thinking about how we think. And this is Dr. Monica Lopez Gonzalez. She's the co-founder and executive scientific and artistic director, notice the and, women can multitask, of the Petite Noiseuse Productions in Maryland. She is has the company's research and development program in creativity and human intelligence, and develops and creates original content as writer, director, photographer, and actor. She sounds like she could be a Jamaican with 4 jobs within theater, film, and photography. What she really is doing is trying to advocate interdisciplinary learning and setting forward new thinking in interdisciplinary spaces about the innovative art and science integration that can revolutionize storytelling, experimental experimentation, and more importantly, public engagement. And she does it in more than one language. So without further ado, and I must say her PhD is in cognitive science. So without further ado, let us welcome Dr. Monica Lopez Gonzalez. How are you? Thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm doing well, and thank you so much, Claire, Doctor, really, I should say, Claire Nelson, for having me and for having this opportunity to speak more about the really crucial questions about the future, our futures together.
Right. So this conversation started back in 2014 and we're continuing 2018, exploring how the future for women might emerge. A lot has happened since then. 2017 brought on a wave of activism as women marched in protest against Trumpism. And so when you think about where we are now and you think about the grand agenda for the UN, which says we resolve between now and 2030 to end poverty and hunger, to combat inequalities, to provide just and inclusive societies, to protect human rights and promote gender equality and empowerment of women and girls. How do you, as a woman working in a space that, well, a lot of women have been more or less moving up in this space, but how do you interpret that in your work and for your work?
Right, so the agenda here, the UN's agenda for 2030, really does strike a chord with me in so many ways. So I can say, of course, as a woman, I have certainly seen and felt the rejection, the lack of attention, the disregard, the disrespect. But I also believe in the power of educating by example to change attitudes. And that's really what I'm about. And so if I can be the best person that I can and stand as a role model to young girls, for example, that yes, you can be smart, you can be unique, you can be confident and forceful with your ideas, you can be creative, you can be ambitious, you can be that lover of knowledge and of curiosity, then you can empower others. And it's precisely that I feel that if I can do all of that and empowered by being that type of person, then I've succeeded. So this is something really that I've noticed, that it's really truly the small steps that are taken by us strong-willed individuals that lead to the bigger and sustainable platforms of impact.
So let me talk a little bit about your work, because I must say that as an engineer, I'm not so au fait with the idea of cognitive science and how this idea of art and science integration can revolutionize the way we see the future. So first of all, just clarify for me and others what aspect of cognitive science are you engaged in?
Sure. So just quickly to make a clear definition of the field, cognitive science really is the interdisciplinary understanding of the mind-brain. So what that means is that it's taking questions, methodologies, techniques from the neurosciences, from psychology, from the behavioral sciences, from anthropology, from philosophy, from computer science. So if you want to think about it, cognitive science, I would call it the mother of all brain sciences.
Well, I like the word mother, because I'm going to bring it back to where we're working about, because as a mother of all brain sciences and understanding the way the human brain mind works, the metaphysical perspective that says, as you think, so you become, asks me to ask this question. We are seeing so many dystopian futures being promoted in the movies. Occasionally you might see a bright spark of something, right? But as you think about this idea of storytelling, and you think about the technology that people say is neutral but is driving change, whether it's AI or biotech or cognitech or infotech, all of these technologies, what future are you seeing, given the way our mind brain is working at the human level? Which future do you see as emerging? By this I mean, we're seeing, for example, a backlash right now in America, right? A backlash to the Obama years. So what we're experiencing is a backlash. So based on your understanding of how the human mind processes information and goes through change, what kind of things you think, what are the scenarios you see possibly emerging in 2030?
So what I think the best way to think about it is that I really believe our future as not only women, but in general, women and men, really depends on the type of future we want to have and the obstacles that we must face together. And that means both women and men in order to achieve that future. So of course, there are deep-seated problems and the rising power of human intelligence, and that is something that we have to consider. However, now is the moment to decide what we want from all of these intelligent technology and bring in the aspects of cognitive science. Now is the moment to really criticize, evaluate, and look at us as how we have been human beings, the actions we have made, why we made them, and the decisions we made. So once we really critically take into and really look at these problems, both of the past and the current where we are in the present, then we can move further into the future. Because I really believe that we need to give voice to the voiceless now, because that's how we breed diversity.
So you're saying diversity of thought, right?
Yes.
And how we think. And it's precisely the reason why I wanted to have you in this conversation, because how we think still seems to be stuck for many people in the dark ages. And so how do you think we can get this paradigm shift? We're hearing about the future being female, for example, as a new meme, this idea that Athena principle that says it's women's style of thinking and men who think like women that will rule the future. How do we get more people more rapidly to shift their thinking from the, let's say, masculine driven, fear-based scarcity survival style to a more feminine style of sharing, less competition, more collaboration? Is there actually, does science provide a way to explore that conversation? Is that part of what is happening in your field, that conversation?
Well, I believe that the conversation in terms of giving women a platform and giving women the positions of leadership in general is happening, the discussion in the field. Now, with respect to the cognitive brain sciences, I would simply say that at the end of the day, I'm not looking at women versus men. I'm really looking at human fine brain. And so for me, everybody comes to the world with capacity to learn, to be creative, to be able to discuss and interact with others. So our own species, right? Within our own humans. And so that's really what I think needs to enter into the dialogue, that we from day one are created equal. So if we take that as the mindset from which to build our conversation, then yes, we should not be having problems with, oh, okay, no, let's look at this perspective versus this one, or let's ignore this. No, we should be saying, this is the wealth and the diversity of perspectives. Look how beautiful. It's precisely the diversity and the wealth of the perspectives of this that allow us to have humanity. So until we take all of those into consideration and give a platform to every single voice, then that's when we're going to have the equality, and that's when we're going to have a true paradigm.
Well, I would agree that our common history, well, certainly in the Western world, our common history of what women's place was seemed to have overshadowed what some of the more, let's say, ancient wisdom knew about. There's a role for the female energy and a role for the masculine energy, and the village or the community needed both to succeed. You are emerging as a leader in this new space of the integration of art and science, and your organization, the Petite Noiseuse Productions, is indeed beginning to be recognized as this change maker. How does your belief system, then, as you have said it, that we are all equal, and therefore, I'm paraphrasing here, that you're probably not saying let's all rush from masculine thinking to feminine thinking, but let's have a wholeness, right?
Yes.
I'm calling it wholeness. I've been speaking to the issue of wholeness. A wholeness in constructing the leadership that has to help us navigate the treacherous waters that we're passing through. How does your work or your belief system around the core principles of us being equal inform the kind of work you do, the productions you do in theater, the kind of research you're doing, the kind of advice you're providing to organizations that are seeking you out for this conversation?
Right. So I'm going to take off that idea of the holism. So I really believe in the holistic perspective. That's what we're talking about here. And I truly believe that fundamentally, any sort of change making and the kind that I'm doing really depends on the right type of open-minded, multidisciplinary, and creative education. And yeah, so, I mean, we can think about it this way, that education starts from day one. And time again, we see examples of the power of giving people the chance to learn, to experiment, and to discover. We can almost think of education as the seed that will yield our future. And it's precisely through understanding creativity through different perspectives, using different disciplines to understand creativity, and getting at that answer of what is it that makes us human. With respect to public engagement and working in the theatrical and film worlds, entertainment worlds, it's precisely bringing new material with new voices to audiences, and then hearing and listening to their opinions and reactions. And then with respect to education, it's really bringing together multidisciplinary strands.
Well, certainly, there's a lot of talk now about STEM education, having technology literacy, having science literacy, having futures literacy. I mean, I don't know how people are going to survive having to have all these literacies. But people are saying you simply can't survive. It's like me trying to use my smartphone. I mean, there's things that I really cannot do on my smartphone, and I give it to my godchildren who are teenagers, and they're like, and they're done, right? Because I'm only functionally literate in the smartphone, right? But I am not, I'm not embedded in that space. I'm asking this because...
Can I add something right here, right now?
Yes.
I think, but that's really the point I'm trying to make, that if from day one,
Yes.
we're taught to have the mindset that's open
Yes.
to learning lots of different topics, disciplines, concepts, what have you, then that is what's going to later allow you to accept and be willing to listen to diverse thinking.
But how are we going to get that education into the current system? Because social change required for the paradigm shift, for us to get to 2030 by 2050, I'm giving us extra time, right? But I'm assuming we're not going to make the goals, but if let's say we get started, we're going to finish, right? If we want to get to 2030 by 2040, for example, we need to really have 10% of a population having this worldview around how we share water, how we share the sea, how we share decision making, how we share intellectual property, all the things that make us now a global planetary society. How do you see these different movements coming together? The environmental movement, the hashtag Me Too movement, the hashtag civil rights movement, it's so many different movements. How do you see the education sector, or education by means of other means other than formal education, being designed and deployed in order to kind of move us in that direction? Is that even possible, given the current systems we have in place?
Well, I think what ends up happening is that, in my case, and certainly I can see also for your case, and many of our similar situations, that we've gone the entrepreneurial route.
Yeah.
What this means is that the big institutions, big organizations that have continued the archaic, siloed concept of education and thinking really need to accept and allow, and I'm almost saying take a radical stance and say, you know what, these entrepreneurs that have given proof of concept, who have shown the value, the newness, the innovativeness of their platform, their paradigm, needs to now take center stage. Because we've gotten to a point with respect to the Me Too issue, equal pay, and so forth, and all other big movements that are happening. People are really saying, you know what, enough is enough. And none of these individuals that are part of these different movements are willing to even let a single slip of disrespect. And so what this means is that together as a collective, we really need to really enter into these established systems and say, you know what, no, my paradigm is working, or those of us together, our paradigms are working. We have proof of concept, and therefore you institutions, you organizations need to now take us seriously. And start it's because
change making is not easy. I mean,
of course not. And but that goes back to my statement of the small steps.
Yes.
Really makes big impact and change, because it's those of us individually who have created these small changes with already huge impact, because it's a domino effect. That's what ends up happening.
Yes. In Japan, Dr. Nirimima has been using the phrase rikejo, which is a Japanese word that has it's translated as scientific way of thinking, but it actually means more than that. It means like layers of cultural meaning, such as intellectual curiosity and open-mindedness, and this balance of the masculine and the feminine traits, the yin yang, so to speak. And so as we think about this idea of creating this, have you been able to identify organizations, tribes with which you might align yourself to move this agenda?
You mean in terms of
like formal institutions, like in other words, we are individuals who are working in this body of work, but we don't really have, let's say, a tribe, an official, because the system still works in like which official organization is pushing this agenda. So we think about the global challenges, right? We talk about healthcare, we talk about ocean, we talk about rules and the practice. But what you're talking about, or what I think I'm hearing, is that it's not only the doing, it's also the being that has to shift. How are we being? And some of that being comes in the educational process from day one. So if it's from age 0 to 5, Montessori training teaches kids to be all of these things, but then they go into the standard school and they're going back into pass the exam. Exactly. So are you a part of any movements that can help to sort of amplify what you're doing around the global challenge of having enough people understanding that we have to not just do different, but we have to be different in order to make the paradigm shift for a better world for women and men?
So in terms of being part of an explicit movement like these other ones, with respect to this change of mindset, no. However, I certainly am implicitly. And I think what we end up seeing is that, again, it goes back to this issue of being an individual and an entrepreneur, that because one is in one small sort of platform, it has been very hard to penetrate in much bigger circles. However, I would say, and this is actually, I mean, this is what's so amazing as to why we're speaking together today. We just came from being Salzburg Global Fellows. And so when you ask in terms of, is there an organization that I would identify with respect to this type of thinking and people who are willing to listen first? What do we need? Where are we at now so that we can move forward? I would say it's the Salzburg Global Seminar.
Yes, it has always been a space for exploration of ideas.
Exactly.
And so how do we then move this practice? So if you had to pick one of the global challenges, which one would you attach yourself to and why?
Honestly, I can't really say one global challenge picked. No, and I'm going to tell you why. Because all of them are interrelated and they're dependent on each other. In fact, I think that's the mistake to say pick one challenge. No, we really need to take all of them. So think about it this way. So for the sake of argument, I'm going to pick climate change. But honestly, by picking climate change, I also mean I'm picking artificial intelligence. I'm picking up healthcare. I'm picking up education. Because we need to work as a collective to deal with our changing environment.
But actually, I think that based on your passion.
No, but that's the thing. In order to do that, we need to harness our talents to create the right smart technologies to deal with those changes. Which means we also need to consider how they're going to alter our resources. So now, how is that going to affect our healthcare? How is that going to affect our environment? How is that going to affect us, how we gather crops, how we make our food, right? Which is then going to influence, okay, so then that's going to influence our actions, our data, our privacy as citizens, right? We're using technology. So that is directly related to how we share information, care about finance. So see, all of them are interrelated. I mean, I could keep going because the implications are wide-ranging. And I think that has been a problem, that we need to say, okay, these are the 5-10 global challenges. How are they interrelated? In what ways are they interrelated? And how can fixing one lead to directly affecting the other?
So therefore, your one global challenge that you would work on is the interrelationship of the global challenges.
Yes, really. It becomes the meta, right? The meta question. But,
so I think you should add a 18th, a 19th or 20th challenge to the UN SDGs. The challenge of integrating these 17 goals and passing the information in a way that's integrated, which means, to come back to La Petite Noiseuse Productions, the integration of the science and the art of change making.
Exactly. Well, well, that is exactly the argument I'm making, that the problem why we see so many narrow-minded, siloed, archaic systems and ideas is precisely because throughout the years, through education and elsewhere, because everything has a domino effect, we have seen narrowing of thought, narrowing of knowledge. And it's precisely this narrowing of thought and knowledge that has prevented true thinking at a global level, not only globally in the world, but globally across disciplines.
So then, as we come to a close, as you think about Women's History Month, International Women's Day, this idea of storytelling, story making, which you are very much a part of driving, I want you to tell me the story, the headline for your 2030 success story that has advanced the direction that you are passionate about, which is the direction of how do you educate people differently. What's your headline story? 2030. Let's dive in.
2030 headline story. Well, as a general headline, I would say, as men have fallen disgraced by their own stupidity, women now lead all major companies and institutions and control major political parties throughout the world.
That is definitely what you call a separate but equal scenario for the future. Okay, tell me one for Le Petite Noiseuse Productions and its impact. 2030 impact.
For 2030, for La Petite Noiseuse Productions, I would say education is available for all, and we have reached a new level of renaissance for the world.
Okay, but what kind of education?
I'm talking the Leonardo da Vinci style.
Okay, so rephrase for me now. What's the actual, what type of education is available to all? Interdisciplinary education?
Yes, so multidisciplinary education is available for all.
There you have it, folks. Now, final question. Are you optimistic, pessimistic, or neutralistic about this vision of the future?
I definitely believe we should be optimistic. I am optimistic. We are truly a very unique species with a fantastic ability to adapt to the new. Mm-hmm. And I'm confident, and I say this really with 100% confidence, that our curiosity and our creativity is what will pave the way for the future. And I'm going to keep future singular because we should be considering ourselves as one with the earth.
I think it's a very good place to leave our conversation. Considering yourself as one with the earth, as creative, conscious beings. Thank you so much, Dr. Monica, for being a part of this conversation on the future of women.
Thank you so much, Dr. Claire, for having me.
So that's it, folks. We want to thank you for joining us on Future Sense Now. We've been speaking to Dr. Monica Lopez Gonzalez, who is the co-founder and scientific and artistic director of the Petite Noiseuse Productions, a company that is promoting and advocating for new ways of integrating and revolutionizing storytelling, empirical experimentation and public engagement in the science and art debate. And we hope you have enjoyed this conversation. We've come to the end of it, but as I've always said, the story continues being written by all of us. We're co-creating the future we want, and that is indeed our shared responsibility. Remember, as we go, it is better for us to act as the parent of our future than the child of our past. Let's go out and co-create. In Jamaica, we say, walk good. Safe journeys.
You have been listening to Future Sense Now with Dr. Claire Nelson, brought to you by the Futures Forum. For more, please visit www.thefuturesforum.org. Thank you for listening. Spread the word. Share the future.